Biblical stories, Divine Comedy, Don Quixote, and Paradise Lost are all classics. With thousands upon thousands of renditions in different media, they became deeply ingrained into European culture throughout centuries. However, we rarely see them fused with an artist in a way similar to the works of one prolific French illustrator, Gustave Doré. With a range of drawings that spans from tens to hundreds of thousands inspired by literature, Dore defined how we view these timeless stories. The success they brought proved to be a two-edged sword. Characterized as a mere illustrator, Gustave Doré was widely criticized as an artist during his own time. Viewed as a lowly craftsman, he tried to break out of the mold with painting and sculpture, but always fell short. Despite this, his work spans from caricatures and comics, documenting war and making propaganda, to dramatic religious paintings. Although Doré's works are widely referenced for their realistic and fantastic elements even today, the artist himself is almost completely forgotten.
Hey, hi! Before starting the video, I want to thank you for watching and tell you that there will be more information about the video itself in the description and the pinned comment. I thought about putting it in the video itself, but it turned out to be too long. So check it out. Thank you for watching again and enjoy.
Paul Gustave Doré was born on the 6th of January 1832 in Strasbourg in a well-off family. Considered a child prodigy, Gustave started working on drawings as early as 5 years old. Though his mother wanted him to pursue an artistic career, Doré's father, a road engineer, wanted his son to pursue a more practical path. In 1847, at the age of 15, Doré relocated to Paris, where he was introduced to caricatures and comic magazines in the publisher shop Auber and Philippon. He made copies of the works he saw here, which he presented to the publisher. These drawings landed him a 3-year contract as the illustrator of the periodical journal Pour Rire. At the age of 17, Gustave lost his father due to illness. After this tragic life event, with support from his mother, Doré started pursuing an artistic career more actively and openly. Already employed and able to fund his education, Gustave began studying at the Lycée Charlemagne. The work he did for the magazine in the period between 1848 and 1855 established his reputation as a satirist. In 2 lithographic series from 1854, in a satirical manner, he presented different aspects of Parisian society, similar to his friend Honoré Daumier. The following year, Doré made one of his most impressive prints from this early period, Death of Gérard de Nerval. The print was inspired by the suicide of his friend and poet Nerval, who hung himself from the grill of a shop. Graphically and imaginatively, Dore presents the frail body of a poet beneath a skeleton blowing a trumpet. Death bears the poet's spirit upward toward an angelic host that awaits it. At the center, on top of the steps, is a blackbird, a common motif in the artist's work. As a personal note, the print is inscribed with verses from Nerval's poem. The depths of eternity were smiling in your eyes. Flames extinguished in the world, light yourself again in heaven. The first chance for Doré to show off his skills in history painting was during the Crimean War. As an answer to the expansionist tendencies of Russia, Britain and France, declared war on the 27th and 28th of March 1854, respectively. In a year-long siege of Sevastopol, a significant Russian naval headquarters, 3 major battles occurred: Alma on the 20th of September, Balaclava on the 25th of October, and Inkerman on the 5th of November 1854. In Paris, in 1855, the war in Crimea was a popular subject at Napoleon III's Universal Exhibition. Doré, only 22 at the time, submitted a painting commemorating the Battle of Alma. This is often considered the first exhibition in which he took part. The battle was a French victory, and Doré chose to represent the moment in which the Zouaves, soldiers drawn from colonial Algeria, overran the Russian artillery by scaling a cliff that rose above the Alma River. Unfortunately, only a monochrome print of the painting survives. However, its significance is in its unusual composition, which does not follow the tradition of historical painting. Instead of focusing on the most important officers, the focus is on the moment itself, with officers factually situated where they might have been. The close relationship of the French with the British during this time is shown in an allegorical painting, Death of Rizzio. Davide Rizzio was an Italian advisor of Mary, Queen of the Scots. As one of her most hated courtiers, he was murdered by the English aristocracy on the 9th of March, 1566. As the Queen and her advisor dined together, the conspirators entered the room and stabbed Rizzio over 50 times, while her husband restrained the then pregnant Queen. Using allegorical language, Dore, a French artist, turned a British subject into a representation of an alliance against Russia's tyrannical ambitions in Europe. However, this piece was never exhibited since Italy entered the war against Russia, and the painting could be read as indicative of the Italian troops and France turning on their new ally. Doré's output against Russia during the Crimean War was most influential through his engravings. His picturesque, dramatic, and caricatural history of Holy Russia had hundreds of illustrations meant to demean Russia humorously. Gustave Doré's last work on the war came in 1857, being one of the artists commissioned by Napoleon III to make a painting for the Museum of French History at Versailles. He represented the subject of the Battle of Inkerman, the bloodiest event of the war. Doré wanted to represent a heroic defense mounted by the 3,500 British men under Sir George de Lacy Evans. On the foggy morning of the 5th of November 1854, 15,000 Russian troops descended on the no-man's land of Inkerman Ridge. Not realizing the size of the enemy army due to fog, Evans sent his troops to meet them. Repelling waves of Russians and suffering heavy losses, British troops were rescued by French and British reinforcements. The canvas is crowded with British and French Zouaves soldiers charging into their enemy. While they are distinguished by their uniforms, fog and grey Russian uniforms amalgamate into a monochrome wash, denying the enemy any notable pictorial presence and emphasizing the triumph of the Allies. Doré's propagation of nationalism through these wartime images was a fundamental point of success in his early work. His political work as an artist continued years later during the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune, which won't be part of this video. Gustave Doré's technical skills, working ethic and social intelligence soon earned him commercial success in the French capital, bringing commissions on the illustration of literary subjects. Illustrations of humorous works by Rabelais and Balzac allowed Doré to move away from political satire. The first edition of the 16th century triumph of the grotesque and erudition, Rabelais' Gargantua and Pantagruel, appeared in 1854 with 104 drawings, most of small scale. The series was a profound success, and Doré continued with the publication of The Wandering Jew in 1856, focusing solely on the illustrations. The story of a Jewish cobbler condemned to wander the world allowed Doré to produce great scenes of romantic flair. In 1862, the artist traveled to Spain to create authentic illustrations for Don Quixote. Consequently, the 120 plates are filled with colorful Spanish details, which influenced his other works as well. His subsequent commercial success was La Fontaine's Fables from 1868. Described by the artist as one of his most difficult tasks, it offered him an unusual viewpoint from an animal's perspective. Following La Fontaine, Doré represents human fallibility in the guise of animals. Another, slightly controversial at the time, was his illustration of Alfred Tennyson's The Idylls of the King, inspired by the legends of King Arthur, done in 1868. Though done for the English market and approved by the poet, illustrations were criticized in America and affirmed in France. Even though all of these were important in building a successful career for Dore, it is his work on Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy and King James Bible where he shines. Up to the 1860s, Dore had not revealed any particular interest in religious subjects, but as a professed Roman Catholic, he must have been closely connected with the biblical narrative. In 1861, Gustave Doré came to the forefront of the Parisian art scene with his illustrations for Dante Alighieri's Inferno. Not only were they a commercial success, but they also influenced contemporary artists who sought to do the subjects from the comedy. Planned by Doré as early as 1855, Dante's illustrations were the first in the series of great literary works he meant to produce in large in-folio editions. Despite Dante being fairly popular in France, Doré found it challenging to secure a publisher for the luxurious editions he envisioned. The average price of the books was 10 francs, and Dore demanded 100. He settled on publishing The Inferno on his own, which turned out to be his most successful artistic undertaking. After its success, the publishers picked up the Purgatorio and Paradiso part of the Divine Comedy, appearing only in 1868. Unlike previous illustrations of Dante, which included only in-text vignettes, Dore insisted on full-page illustrations. This affected the perception of Dante's words as secondary to the illustrations. Concerning the actual drawings, critics considered the artist's skill and temperament and the poet's intensity a perfect match. Doré's capacity for visualizing detailed and evocative descriptions surpassed those of previous illustrators who were more classically oriented. The drawings of the Divine Comedy are characterized by Michelangelesque figures, with attention to the infernal landscape, the monumental scale of specific figures in relation to others, or the minimization of figures within landscapes, and the use of dramatic effects of light and shade. In 1865 and 1866, Doré produced illustrations for the King James Bible, probably his most influential works, and his envisioning of religion as theater earned him a reputation as a preacher-painter. Works characterized by dramatic and spectacular feelings revitalized an established tradition and made it into something meaningful for a wider public, not a few elite patrons. The most effective of these were apocalyptic and horrific subjects, such as Daniel's vision of the four beasts. The very indistinct watery quality of the wash makes the vision all the more haunting. The figure of the prophet on the rocks is almost invisible, but the beasts rising out of the ocean have a ghostly presence. Due to the popularity of the illustrations, Dore occasionally produced painted versions of the drawings, such as The Flood. It depicts the final moments of God's destruction of the earth, when the flood waters rose to cover even the highest peaks. The two struggling mothers, a young woman with 2 children, and a tigress with her cubs, seek refuge on a high rock. The ominous clouds and the churning sea make their fate clear. One of the most magnificent examples of Doré taking a Bible subject and turning it into a grand independent drawing is the illustration of St. John's vision of the crowned Virgin of the Immaculate Conception. This apocalyptic subject of the battle between good and evil produced a most dramatic composition. The divine host, with the tiny Virgin and Child on the crescent moon, serves to dispel the writhing mass of the sea monster. Gustave Doré considered himself more than just a successful illustrator, which was to his contemporaries akin to a craftsman. He aspired to be a proper artist and exhibited at the Paris Salon from 1848 to 1879. His paintings met initial success with his works on the Crimean War, but most went largely without appreciation in France. There were multiple reasons that the critics rejected Doré's paintings. Success as an illustrator was the main hurdle. Besides being considered craftsmen, illustrators produced popular culture. Cheap newspapers and expensive folios were part of the bourgeois consumerism, and Doré was perceived as catering to the gaudy, politically conservative middle class. In this sense, he was rejected by the avant-garde artists and progressive intellectuals. His association with illustration and popular media was problematic for the artistic establishment held by the Academy. Despite this, Doré continually exhibited at the Salon, where critics attacked his choice of subject matter and style. His works were considered a threat to the traditional separation between popular and elite culture, between crafts and art. Another threat was Dore's lack of formal artistic education. Doré didn't help his case by using the Salon to advertise his upcoming publications via drawings. Cultural issues in France during the 1850s and 1860s also influenced his unpopularity as a painter. Modernization, industrial production, Franco-Anglo relations, his success in England, and anti-German sentiment, his birthplace that was considered Germanic, artistic influences, and mediums perceived as Germanic were all taken into account when contemporaries evaluated his work. However, across the Channel in England, Gustave Doré met with the success he yearned for in France. London, the leading industrial and capitalist metropolis where the social divide was widening, held a special place in the European imagination in the 19th century. Doré visited London as a reporter several years before the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, and his works offer a French perspective characterized by a fascination with this neighboring country. London. A Pilgrimage was published by Grant and Company in England in 1872 and reprinted in France with a new text in 1876. This exceptional volume had a lasting influence on the continental European perception of Victorian London. Doré explored various city districts in the company of journalist Blanchard Gerald, who wrote the text. The joint work strives to represent the extremes of London's social life in ink and pencil, contrasting by turning the murky underworld with the brightness of the places where high society went to relax. The cumulative result is one of the most striking images of modern city life. Gerald remarked that the abiding places of the poor riveted Doré's attention. An example is his drawing of people sleeping huddled under the London Bridge. Another motif that excited Doré was the festivities and big crowds. It offered an opportunity to present different social types and varied reactions, such as those on Lord Mayor's Day, Derby Day, and the Putney Boar races. In all of these festive London scenes, the artist devoted great care to capturing the fervid excitement of the crowd, the most elegantly dressed ladies and gentlemen, and some decidedly odd figures of Doré's imagination. Since sculpture was his medium of old age, it is filled with melancholic rumination on morbid or unsettling subjects. As an autodidact, Doré came to sculpture late in 1877 when he sent his fate and love to the Salon. His expectations can be summed up with his words: "There will be no shortage of criticisms and attacks, as I think that there are plenty of people who will be annoyed to see me as a sculptor, but I hope that I will also have some staunch defenders." Even though he wasn't formally educated as a sculptor, Doré's work in the medium is characterized by academic naturalism and allegorical symbolism, and Doré received enough positive reviews to continue sculpting. In 1880, Doré's Madonna, made for the tomb of actress Alice Ozy, his lover, won a third-class medal at the Salon. This proved to be enough fuel for him to continue making sculptures until the end of his life. Doré's sculptures fall into two categories: large-scale, ambitious, or extravagant allegorical works, and smaller bronzes for high-quality limited editions. Like a massive part of Doré's works, the underlying theme of his sculptures is mortality. The sculpture Love Triumphs Over Death shows Cupid resting on a bed of skulls. The theme is taken from Doré's illustrations for his edition of Ariosto's Orlando Furioso and is closely related to its story. Exhausted after all the convolutions of the plot, which included multiple deaths, the personification of love collapses on a floor strewn with skeletons. As in painting, Doré's sculpture also has a patriotic note. La Défense Nationale was a model for a competition organized by the Seine Prefecture in 1879 after a successful defense of Paris. It presents a soldier with a drawn sword and banner directed by the allegorical figure of Paris, wearing a crown of ramparts. While all of these are pretty traditional in their subject and execution, Doré's sculpture from the 1880s brings a sense of originality in a mixture of circus entertainers and gymnastics. His human pyramid is a bronze cast of circus performers done in 1881. Some of these works have a humorous character, such as Leapfrog, in which a knight jumps over the back of the monk. All these are marked by an attempt to defy gravity and create works in which figures seem to fly or be frozen in the air. Following a short illness, Gustave Doré passed away on 23rd January 1883 in Paris due to a heart attack. The last series he worked on was the illustration for The Raven, the melancholy poem of Edgar Allan Poe. Published shortly after his death, Doré provided a cinematic treatment of the poem with 26 plates. The original drawings were made and sent to the American firm Harper's for engraving and publication. However, without being able to oversee the work of engravers, Doré's moody drawings came out as dry transcriptions. The drama is set with the first introductory image. It shows the unnamed and barefoot narrator plunging despairingly into the curtains as a skeleton unfurls a banner upon which the poem's keyword "nevermore" is inscribed, and the raven makes a hasty exit. For the stanzas dealing with the lost love, Lenore, Doré works in a lighter, more delicate fashion, most notably in his depiction of the line, "For the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore." In other images of the series, an ominous raven makes its dramatic entrance on a great gust of wind. The frenzied protagonist is wildly interrogating the bird. Lenore appears in the narrator's visions, and shadow emanates from the raven perched on the bust of Athena, descends the wall and envelops the narrator in a pool of darkness. Gustave Doré had no immediate followers, but his effect on the collective imagination was profound. Van Gogh copied Doré's London works, most famous Prisoner's Round, and considered them noble in sentiment. Doré is also considered one of the founding fathers of the comic strip medium, but his most significant influence was in cinema. Film embraced Doré's iconography from its start as an artistic medium. Nonetheless, Doré's book illustrations were never explicitly adapted to the big screen. Though not confirmed, one of his engravings for The Adventures of Baron Munchausen inspired shots of Georges Mélis's 1902 film A Trip to the Moon. The widest diffusion of Doré's work via the big screen is his Bible images. Almost every film about the Bible since the life and passion of Jesus Christ produced refers to his illustrations. Doréan references are explicit in Michael Curtiz's Noah's Ark, especially in the first shots of the Ark and the Tower of Babel. Cécile B. DeMille, fascinated by Doré's Bible gallery since age 10, codified for the screen realism, Orientalism, and theatricalization of Doré's Bible images. His 10 Commandments would be described as a celebration of Gustave Doré in Technicolor. Films dealing with life in London in the Victorian era, by directors ranging from David Lean to Roman Polanski and Tim Burton, draw on Doré's visions of the city. The most explicit cinematic borrowing from Doré's series is Polanski's version of Oliver Twist, whose opening image features one of its engravings. This is followed by sequences showing Oliver exploring the city that Polanski shot with the London volume in his hand, adjusting the lighting and positioning of people to match the prints. Doré's primal forests, particularly those of Atala, were used in the various versions of King Kong. In the 1933 version, Willis O'Brien modeled his miniature jungle on Doré's imaginative backdrops. By working on the animation frame by frame, the technical team gave the film a dreamlike quality similar to Doré's drawings. Lastly, in the realm of cartoons and animation, Walt Disney owes a considerable debt to Doré, with his fairies, magical trees, oniric chiaroscuros, and dramatic perspectives. The most apparent connection with the character of Puss in Boots from the Shrek series is directly inspired by Dore's engraving of the same name. Relentlessly criticized throughout his career, Gustave Doré emerged as an artist determined to succeed in all areas of creativity. Cursed to be pushed aside by his contemporaries, Doré's influence persists today, even unconsciously. Thematically, Doré's work is deeply religious, social, and propagandistic. Stylistically, Doré's work is characterized by dramatization, the mass of figures, a mixture of realism and fantasy, and the play of light and shadows. His art is completed with personal links to his life, influenced by society, and the effects of misery and melancholy that haunted the artist.